3 taps, just 3 taps on the tablet screen, and 176 commercial aircraft belonging to North Star Airlines steel giants weighing tens of tons and preparing for takeoff across the United States suddenly froze, as if an invisible hand had gripped their engines shut. Cabin doors slammed, runways fell silent, departure boards flickered to red, and thousands of passengers from Los Angeles to Miami turned to one another in confusion. The chaos did not begin with a technical failure, but with the decision of one man standing alone in the top-floor office of AeroLink Tower, looking down at Los Angeles, glowing in the morning sun, as if he were studying a chessboard that had just been overturned. Ethan Marshall, 39 years old, CEO of AeroLink Systems, the man the press called the golden mind of aviation security, tightened his fingers around the edge of the tablet, feeling the slow burn of anger still pulsing beneath his ribs. There was no triumph on his face, no smirk, only coldness, a coldness forged through decades of being underestimated, questioned and dismissed in ways people who did not share his skin color would never fully understand. He knew this would cause a storm. He knew the CEO of North Star would panic. He knew the media would swarm like vultures. But he also knew they had chosen the wrong man to belittle. And to understand why the skies above America had gone still that morning, one had to go back 24 hours earlier, to the moment when the man capable of bringing an entire aviation system to its knees with 3 taps was met with a familiar question, delivered with doubt and disdain by a flight attendant. Are you sure you are in the right line? The morning at LAX carried its usual chaos, the loudspeaker calling for late passengers, children crying, suitcase wheels clattering across polished stone floors, and the heavy smell of coffee hanging in the air. Ethan stepped into the crowd like any other business traveler: navy suit, crisp white shirt, pale gold tie, polished black shoes, and a compact carry-on gliding behind him. He looked exactly like a senior executive on a business trip, except others were recognized that way, and he was not. The first sign of discrimination came sooner than he expected. At security, 3 white passengers ahead of him passed through easily, with nothing more than a nod from the TSA agent, not even required to remove their shoes. When it was Ethan's turn, the agent raised a hand. "Step aside, sir. Random check." Random, the word for him, felt like a reminder. You do not belong here. Ethan did not argue. He simply removed his laptop, belt, and shoes and stood still while they scanned every inch of him. 17 minutes. A familiar record. When he collected his things and walked away, no apology was offered. He did not need one. He was used to it. But being used to it did not stop it from hurting. Gate 42B was bright with overhead lights. North Star Flight 2186 to Denver was boarding first class. 4 people stood in the priority lane, 3 white men and Ethan. The first 3 had their tickets scanned in seconds. "Welcome aboard, gentlemen." When Ethan stepped forward, the smile of the flight attendant, Haley Grant, vanished, as if she had spotted something suspicious. She looked at him, then his ticket, then him again. "Are you sure you are in the right line?" Her voice was thin, cold, and loud enough for those behind him to hear. Ethan handed her the ticket. First class seat 1A. Haley flipped the ticket as if checking for counterfeit ink, even lifting it close to her eyes. "I need to verify this." She turned and called out, "Mark, come here. I need to check something." Mark Fuller, a broad-shouldered man with heavy eyes, approached like a prison guard blocking an exit. He planted himself in front of Ethan, his voice blunt. ID. Ethan handed it over. Mark inspected it for an unreasonably long time. How did you buy this ticket? My company purchased it. Which company? Aerolink Systems. I am the CEO. Mark smirked as if Ethan had just told a joke. CEO, right, we will see about that. For 10 minutes, Ethan was pushed aside, watched by passengers with pity and whispered annoyance from those waiting in line. Haley leaned toward her co-worker and whispered loudly enough for Ethan to hear. Some people think buying a first-class ticket is enough to fool us. A quiet laugh followed. Ethan stood tall, not bowing, not explaining, but inside him, that familiar coldness spread the sting of humiliation he thought he had outgrown, only to learn it still hurt like the first time. When he was finally allowed to board and sat in seat 1A, the man beside him in seat 1B, a silver-haired gentleman in an expensive suit, looked up from his newspaper. "I am Robert Kent," he said, offering his hand. Ethan shook it. They exchanged a few polite words before Ethan's laptop screen lit up. Robert glanced over. His eyes widened. "Is that the Aerolink interface? Do you work for?" Aerolink. Ethan shut the laptop. "I am Ethan Marshall." Robert swallowed hard. You are Marshall, the CEO of Aerolink?" "Yes." Robert's face drained as if splashed with cold water. "My God, I am sorry. I saw everything during boarding." I will report this," Ethan replied. "No need. I am used to it." But Robert's eyes betrayed him. He had worked in aviation for 30 years, yet had never seen discrimination, this crude, this public. And he knew the man sitting beside him was not someone North Star should have provoked. Haley continued serving first-class passengers champagne in crystal flutes. When she reached Ethan, she set down with a sharp clack a half-filled plastic cup. No napkin, no eye contact, no words. Robert was so outraged he nearly called the cabin manager, but Ethan shook his head. "No need. I am fine." But clearly he was not. His jaw tightened bit by bit. After landing, Ethan went to the premium support desk to file a complaint. Alison Price looked at him for barely 3 seconds before saying, "Probably just a misunderstanding." "Please wait a moment." A moment stretched into 50 minutes. When manager Daniel Hoffman arrived, he listened to Ethan's account with an expression suggesting he was being forced to hear nonsense. "We can give you a voucher. Small mistake, that is all," Ethan replied flatly. "I do not want a voucher. I want a solution." Daniel shrugged, cold and indifferent. "We will review it. We will contact you." No one intended to review anything. No one knew they were dismissing the man who had written the code controlling 176 of their aircraft. No one knew he needed only 3 taps to show them what consequences looked like. And that was how this morning began. 176 aircraft frozen in place, the CEO of North Star losing his mind, the media beginning to speculate operations, engineers shouting because they could not override the system, and Ethan Marshall standing silently in the office of Aerolink Tower Morning Light, reflecting in his eyes like heated steel. He did not feel victorious. He felt justice, a justice the world had owed him far too long. Ethan put on his coat and stepped out of the office, leaving behind a map of the United States, glowing with red alerts. No one knew what was coming next. But Ethan knew. And he was ready, because sometimes 3 taps from the man they underestimated were enough to make the entire sky stop. Most of America woke up with morning coffee, but North Star Airlines woke up to an unprecedented nightmare. 176 of their aircraft remained frozen on the ground, like giant creatures that had been struck down. While thousands of passengers panicked, and the media began calling it the largest aviation incident in 12 years. Ethan Marshall, the man the entire airline was desperately trying to locate, was sitting inside a sleek black SUV, moving slowly toward North Star headquarters in Denver, wrapped in a silence stretched tight like a drawn string. He knew this moment would come. He had been waiting for it since the moment Mark Fuller scrutinized every letter on his ID, as if he were stealing someone else's identity, since the moment Haley slammed a plastic cup onto his tray with the coldness of someone serving a man unworthy of respect, since the moment Daniel Hoffman offered him a voucher like a piece of charity. And now every one of them, an airline worth billions of dollars, was trembling before the very man they had dismissed. The SUV rolled to a stop in front of North Star's headquarters. The Silver Wing emblem gleamed under the sunlight, grand, confident, arrogant, exactly like the culture inside it. Ethan stepped out. A cold wind swept across his face. The glass doors slid open automatically, revealing the vast lobby where employees were rushing back and forth in panic. A receptionist spotted him entering and froze. One look was enough for her to understand. This man was not an ordinary visitor. "Mr. Marshall, please, straight to the executive floor. They are waiting for you. No polished smiles now. No have a nice day. Only fear." And the fear had a reason. On the executive floor, North Star's emergency operations room was at chaos. Urgent meetings phones ringing non-stop, the flight map screens covered with unmoving red dots, engineers shouting, supervisors barking into radios, pressure so intense it felt like the air might explode. CEO Richard Collins, 55 years old, a man with authority carved into every line of his face, stood at the center of the storm, his face flushed with anger. "If this lasts another 30 minutes, we lose $10 million, Collins roared. "Has anyone reached Aerolink yet?" "Who is responsible for this?" A trembling voice answered. "So the one who activated the system is Ethan Marshall." Collins turned his sharp eyes, cutting through the room like blades. Ethan Marshall, the CEO of Aerolink, the man we treated how exactly no one dared breathe. Collins clenched his jaw. "Bring him to the boardroom, now, immediately." Meanwhile, Ethan stepped out of the elevator with a straight, deliberate walk. This was not the walk of a man arriving to apologize or explain. This was the walk of someone who understood he was entering the territory of people who had already placed themselves in a weaker position long before he arrived. A mid-level manager led Ethan into the large boardroom. Every head turned toward him at once. Anger, fear, helplessness, suspicion, and a hint of reluctant respect, because whether they wanted to admit it or not, the man standing before them was the only one who could save them. Richard Collins stood at the head of the table, staring at Ethan, as if staring at a lit fuse. "Mr. Marshall, you know what we need to talk about." Ethan pulled out a chair and sat with a calmness so complete that the entire room fell silent. "I know, Mr. Collins. I also have a few questions for you." Collins planted both hands on the table and leaned forward. "You have paralyzed our entire fleet. Do you understand what you have done?" Ethan did not blink. "I understand. I activated Protocol Sigma, the security diagnostic mode that North Star agreed to as part of the testing contract. Everything is within legal boundaries." A ripple of shock swept through the room. Collins nearly growled. "Legal does not mean acceptable." Ethan tilted his head, his voice dropping each word sharp as a blade. "Just like North Star considers discrimination acceptable, correct?" No one expected that. The sentence hit the room like a lightning strike. Collins slammed a hand on the table. "I do not know what you are implying," Ethan interrupted for the first time, letting his coldness show. You know exactly. I was humiliated at your boarding gate, asked whether I was standing in the right line, forced to prove a first-class ticket, served in a plastic cup while everyone else received glassware. And when I filed a complaint, your staff treated me as if I were being unreasonable. Every eye in the room shifted to Collins. Robert Kent, who had witnessed everything, sat in a corner with his lips pressed tightly together. He knew Ethan was telling the exact truth. Collins inhaled deeply, trying to regain control. "Fine. If there was misconduct, we will investigate. But you cannot just..." Ethan placed his tablet on the table. The screen lit up with the AeroLink interface diagnostic indicators, flashing continuously. A large button glowed on the screen. Override Sigma Protocol. North Star's leadership held their breath. Ethan spoke slowly, but his voice hit like a hammer. "I did not come here to destroy North Star. I came to see whether North Star wants to become a decent airline." Collins narrowed his eyes. "What do you want?" Ethan met his stare, his gaze carrying the weight of a lifetime of being underestimated. "I want acknowledgement, real change, and respect." Collins leaned back and exhaled heavily. For the first time, he faced someone who did not need to bow to his power, because this man's power was greater. "Suppose," Collins began, his voice lower, "suppose we meet your demands. Will you restore the system?" Ethan nodded slightly. "If North Star restores its humanity first." The air froze. In a single heartbeat, Collins understood that he was no longer negotiating with a businessman trying to close a deal. He was negotiating with a man capable of costing North Star hundreds of millions of dollars in a single morning. "We need to speak privately," Collins said, signaling the entire team to leave the room, except Ethan and Robert Kent. The door closed. Collins sat across from Ethan, stripped of his usual authoritarian posture. "Mr. Marshall, I want you to know, I do not permit discrimination in this company." Ethan responded instantly. "But it happened under your watch." Collins fell silent. A rare moment, the silence of a powerful man forced to look in the mirror. Ethan leaned forward. "Do you know what it feels like to be treated as if you do not belong? Even though I am the one who created the technology that protects millions of passengers." Collins did not answer. Ethan continued slower each word, heavy with the years he had carried this weight. "I have spent my entire life proving that I not only deserve to sit in first class, but deserve to build the systems that keep those aircraft safe. Yet your employees treated me as if I was stealing someone else's seat." Robert finally spoke, his voice trembling with lingering shame. "Ethan, I saw everything. I mean it. I have worked 20 years in this industry. But that day was the first time I felt ashamed of the uniform I wore." Collins looked at Robert, then at Ethan, then at the tablet screen. 176 red indicators pulsed like the fading heartbeat of North Star Airlines. "Mr. Marshall," Collins said, his voice now heavy. "Do you truly want North Star to change?" Ethan answered without hesitation. "I want North Star to learn how to treat people correctly, starting with treating me correctly." Collins nodded. It was a reluctant nod, but genuine. He stood, opened the door, and said, "Bring everyone back in. We are going to resolve this." The leadership team rushed back into the room, but no one dared speak. They looked to Collins, waiting. Collins folded his arms, exhaled, and declared North Star will continue working with AeroLink. And more importantly, North Star will implement a full reform of customer service and mandatory anti-discrimination training. A long breath swept through the room. Robert bowed his head. Ethan tapped the tablet lightly. A soft beep sounded. The flight map shifted from red to yellow, then gradually to green. 176 aircraft began rebooting their systems one by one. Ethan rose from his seat. His gaze held no arrogance, no bitterness, only the calm of a man who had waited his entire life to look the world in the eye and say, "This is my boundary." Collins held out his hand. Ethan looked at it for 3 seconds, then took it. A handshake without smiles, only acknowledgement. As Ethan left the boardroom, the executive floor was still chaotic, but every employee now looked at him with an expression that none of them could have imagined, showing him 24 hours earlier respect and a little fear. He walked into the elevator alone, but not isolated. No longer the man asked, "Are you sure you are in the right line?" Today, he was the man who made an entire airline line up correctly. The elevator doors slid shut. Ethan's eyes caught the reflection of the warm yellow lights, deep and sharp like steel. The battle had only just begun, but for the first time in a long time, he felt the world was finally listening. The air inside the elevator seemed to thicken as the steel doors closed, leaving behind a room filled with fear and respect. Yet even as the elevator descended floor by floor, Ethan felt no relief. He stared directly at the glass reflection of himself, a calm, strong silhouette. But beneath it, a storm churned, not born from momentary anger, but from a truth he had lived his entire life. He always had to work twice as hard, just to be considered enough. When the elevator stopped at the ground floor and the doors slid open, the chaos of the lobby rushed in like a wave, phones ringing non-stop, hurried footsteps, tense arguments snapping like tight strings as employees scrambled to handle a crisis that had only been temporarily averted. And in the middle of it all, in the far corner of the lobby, Ethan saw something that made him halt. Haley Grant. The flight attendant who had dismissed him from the very first moment now sat stiffly on a bench against the wall. Her once crisp uniform was wrinkled. Her tight bun had loosened stray strands, falling across her temples. Beside her sat Mark Fuller, the man who had overseen the ID interrogation, clutching his phone and arguing shakily with someone in HR. Haley looked up. Her eyes met Ethan's. Only for a second, but in that second, her expression overflowed with emotions she had never shown before. Panic, regret, and the despair of someone who had just witnessed a truth she never imagined. She shot to her feet, took a step toward him, as if to say something, then stopped. Fear closed around her like a fist. Ethan simply looked at her, a brief, cold look with no cruelty in it. He did not need revenge. Her own actions had already provided that. As he walked past, Mark rose abruptly, preparing to apologize, but Ethan did not stop. He did not turn. He did not acknowledge him, because apologies born only after consequences fall are never worth anything. The Aerolink SUV waited outside. The driver lowered the window and gave Ethan a nod, one filled with genuine respect this time. As the car pulled away from North Star headquarters, Ethan leaned back in his seat, closed his eyes, and let out a long breath. This was not victory. This was justice. But justice had a price, and Ethan knew that price had not yet been fully paid. His phone buzzed. The screen displayed Alicia Reynolds, Vice President of Operations, his closest and most trusted colleague. Ethan answered. "It is done," he said, voice low. "I showed them." On the other end, Alicia exhaled. You sound like you kept everything under control. I did not control it. I chose the moment. Right. A brief pause. But you know this will not end here. Correct? Ethan opened his eyes, gazing out the window at the buildings of Denver, passing by like streams of old memories. I know. Alicia spoke clearly, each word sharp through the line. They will not stay quiet after learning what you can do. There will be investigations. Competitors will try to undermine AeroLink. People will say you abused your power. Ethan's jaw tightened. If they want to say I abused power to defend basic human respect, they can say it. I was insulted publicly. I do not need to bow my head. Alicia let out a tired chuckle, worn from too many years fighting in the tech world. You do not bow your head. That is why you built AeroLink from a small apartment in Oakland and turned it into an empire. A brief warmth stirred in Ethan's chest, but he quickly pulled his emotions back. Too much emotion could blur the goal. Alicia, he said, prepare a report for the board. I want them informed before the news spreads. I am already working on it. And Alicia, Ethan added his voice, lower, heavier. Thank you for standing with me. As long as you fight for what is right, she replied, I will stand with you. When the call ended, Ethan stared out the window again. Denver glowed in the midday sun. The same streets, the same cars, the same buildings. But to him, everything felt different. He knew the media would explode within 12 hours. He knew North Star would have to hold a press conference. He knew the stock market would tremble, and he knew people would say he went too far. That was fine. They were not there when Haley questioned him like a fare evader. They were not there when Mark interrogated him like a criminal. They were not there when Allison dismissed his complaint. They were not there when Daniel Hoffman tossed vouchers at him like scraps to a child. And they certainly were not there when a 10-year-old Ethan scavenged old computer parts from a junkyard to repair them while his mother worked a third night shift of the week. No one had the right to tell him he went too far, demanding the justice that had been denied him for most of his life. The SUV stopped in front of a 5-star hotel where Ethan would rest for a few hours before returning to Los Angeles. But as he stepped out of the car, something felt wrong. A cluster of reporters stood across the street. One of them raised a microphone and shouted, Mr. Marshall, there are reports that AeroLink caused the technical issue that delayed hundreds of North Star flights. Do you have any comment? Ethan stopped. The flashing lights reflected like a sea of sparks. Everything was moving faster than he expected. Another reporter pushed forward. North Star claims this was a system malfunction. Is it true that you activated the protocol that caused the shutdown? Ethan looked at them, a crowd eager for blood. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew the story began with a small, persistent humiliation, the kind people assume no one cares about. But Ethan cared, and he would not stay silent. I will answer everything he said, voice steady and deep when the time is right. For now, I have work to do. He entered the hotel lobby, leaving behind a barrage of questions. But as the glass doors closed behind him, Ethan realized something important. The world was beginning to pay attention. And if the world was paying attention, he would not let them misunderstand the story. He did not do this to destroy. He did it to warn, to awaken, to defend a truth that too many systems preferred to bury. When discrimination becomes a habit, it will destroy an entire company long before it destroys a single individual. Ethan did not know that, as he stepped into the hotel elevator, a passenger's camera recording had already gone viral online, showing Haley asking him, "Are you sure you are in the right line?" in that condescending tone. The video was drawing hundreds of thousands of views within 30 minutes. And within a few hours, the world would know exactly how North Star had treated the man who kept their aircraft safe. But Ethan didn't check social media. He simply stood inside the elevator, closing his eyes for a brief moment, as if gathering strength for the next chapter. A chapter he knew would be harsher, louder, and more decisive than everything that had happened so far. Because the first tap had brought justice, the next would bring truth, and the final tap would bring a change no one could stop. News traveled faster than light in a world where phones never rested, where screens were swiped every 3 seconds, where people needed only a drop of drama to ignite the entire internet. By the time Ethan stepped into the luxury hotel suite, he had not even hung his suit jacket on the hook before his phone vibrated non-stop as if it was about to explode. Emails, messages, missed calls, press alerts, a tidal wave rushing straight toward him, unstoppable and inescapable. And at the center of that wave were 3 words: Ethan Marshall. He sat down, loosened his tie, and opened his laptop. The screen lit up with headlines detonating across the home pages of the Financial Times, CNN Business, Bloomberg Aviation, and The Verge. More than 170 North Star flights grounded internal source claims Aerolink involvement. Passengers accuse North Star of discrimination. Aerolink CEO linked to the incident. A black man denied boarding only to be revealed as the CEO behind North Star's critical systems. Ethan was not surprised. The world loved 2 things: scandal and spectacular reversals. And today they had both. But then he saw something that made his heartbeat slow for a moment. The video. A 7-second clip recorded by a passenger during boarding. Haley Grant, turning to Ethan, raising her eyebrows, her voice cold as ice. "Are you sure you are in the right line?" The video froze. At the moment, Ethan remained silent, his eyes impossibly calm. 7 seconds. 7 seconds were enough to burn down social media. Comments flooded in. Unbelievable. Where did she think she was showing off like that? If a CEO is treated this way, then what about regular people? North Star must be held accountable. Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Not from pain, but because it was all too familiar. Familiar enough that he could predict each stage of public outrage. But this time, he was not the silent victim. He was the man with the power to strike back. A sharp knock sounded at the door. Ethan opened it. Standing there was Alicia Reynolds, Vice President of Operations at Aerolink, face sharp as a blade, her presence so strong it changed the temperature of any room she walked into. "We need to talk," she said, without wasting a second. Ethan stepped aside to let her in. Alicia entered like someone who had just outrun the entire tech industry. Her hair was tied high, her black shirt perfectly pressed, and in her hand was a thick stack of documents, clipped with a silver binder. "The board is in session," she said quickly. "They all want to know whether you really activated the Sigma protocol, and if you did, why?" Ethan replied calmly. "They should hear the truth before the media invents its own version." Alicia did not smile. She let out a short, blunt exhale. "You know how people on the board are. Old white men with millions in stock who do not care about discrimination. They care about their pocketbooks." Ethan looked at her. "I did not do this to please them." "I know," Alicia said, her voice dropping lower, "but they might use what you did against you." Ethan tilted his head. "You think they will fire me?" Alicia let out a dry laugh. the kind of laugh from someone who had lived long enough in the industry to know how dirty things could get. If the stock drops hard enough, any board will sell its soul to protect their fortune. But you are Ethan Marshall. You are not someone who can be replaced. Ethan sat across from her hands, interlaced. Alicia, he said slowly, we built AeroLink from 2 people in a rented room. I am not afraid of losing the title CEO. I am afraid of losing the chance to use that position to force this world to correct itself. Alicia stared at him for a long moment. For the briefest fraction of a second, her eyes softened a rare expression that could have been auctioned for millions. Then you need to prepare yourself. She opened her laptop. Dozens of windows appeared at once, stock charts, media monitoring dashboards, emails from partners, emergency meeting orders from the board. Tomorrow they will ask you 3 things, Alicia said. 1, why you activated Sigma. 2, whether you installed an unreported backdoor in the system. 3, whether you intend to misuse your authority again in the future. Ethan shook his head with a faint, cynical smile. People who have distorted the system always assume others will do the same. Exactly. Alicia closed her laptop and stood up. You will have to speak for yourself. I will back you, but the rest is your battle. Ethan nodded. Alicia reached the door, then paused. And Ethan, he looked up. Thank you for doing what millions of people wish they could do, but do not have the power to. The door closed behind her. Ethan stood alone in the room. The golden sunset poured through the windows, stretching across the floor like a carpet laid out for a returning warrior. But he knew the real battlefield lay ahead. His phone rang. This time, it was the chairman of the AeroLink board, Gregory Hayes, a man wealthy enough that losing 2% of his stock value meant losing more than Ethan earned in his entire pre-success life. Ethan picked up. Ethan Gregory's voice came through heavy, old, powerful, yet carrying the urgency of a man losing control. We have a problem. Ethan leaned back into the sofa. I know. Did you activate the Sigma protocol? Yes. Good God, Gregory exhaled so loudly it crackled in the speaker. Do you understand this will set the internet on fire, destabilize the market, and possibly trigger a federal investigation? Ethan's voice did not shift. I did it under full contractual authority, and I did it because I was subjected to blatant discrimination. Gregory was silent for a few seconds before speaking again, his voice slightly softer. You know I have supported you from the beginning. But the board, they do not care about personal reasons. Ethan cut in. Discrimination is not a personal reason. It is a systemic problem. Gregory fell silent again. This time, the silence lingered longer. Tomorrow, he finally said, you need to be at headquarters in Los Angeles before 9 o'clock. The full board will be waiting. Ethan answered quietly. I will be there. The call ended. He placed the phone on the table and looked out through the window. The city was beginning to light up. Strips of white, gold, and red glowed like the veins of a massive living organism. And Ethan felt something unusual. He was not afraid. Not afraid of the board. Not afraid of North Star's retaliation. Not afraid of the media. Not afraid of being labeled the rebellious CEO. Maybe because he had spent his entire life fighting. From the junkyard where he collected old circuit boards. From the MIT lab where he was the only black student in his cohort. From his first company where his ideas were borrowed as casually as the air someone borrowed from his lungs. His greatest fear was not losing his position, it was remaining silent, Silent so everything would return to the way it was. Silent so more Haleys could keep asking more Ethans if they were standing in the right line. He stood, walked to the window, and placed a hand on the cool glass. Below him, the city spun around the small priorities of its people, finding a taxi, ordering dinner, rushing to a night shift. While he, a man with the power to stop the sky itself, was preparing to stand before a board equally powerful to defend justice. And for a moment there, Ethan saw his reflection blur before coming back into focus. Not the reflection of Ethan Marshall, the CEO, but the reflection of 12-year-old Ethan staying awake until 2 in the morning to repair his first computer on a shaky wooden table. That boy did not know he would someday change aviation. But he knew one thing to survive: you had to fight. And Ethan Marshall, 39 years old CEO, the man who made 176 aircraft stand still, was preparing to fight once more, this time not to be recognized, but to force the world to face the truth. He turned away from the glowing city lights, stepped back from the window, and walked into the night with the resolve of someone who would not retreat. Because tomorrow he would face the board. And he knew that Battlefield would be fiercer than the skies that had stood still that morning. The next morning did not arrive with the gentle sunlight of Los Angeles, but with harsh blows from the media, the stock market, and the flood of urgent messages coming from inside Aerolink. When Ethan stepped out of the car in front of the company's towering glass headquarters in the heart of the financial district, the air felt electrified. Camera flashes exploded from every direction as dozens of reporters swarmed him, the atmosphere trembling like a disturbed hornet's nest. Mr. Marshall Northstar says they are working with the FAA to investigate the incident. Do you have a comment? Is it true you intentionally froze 176 flights as retaliation for discrimination? Is Aerolink hiding a security flaw? Did you abuse your authority? Ethan did not answer. He walked straight through the mob, like an arrow cutting through a storm security, parting the crowd as he entered the lobby. But his mind was far from calm. Today was not the day he fought Northstar. Today, he faced the Aerolink board of directors, the people who had the power to push him aside with a single cold vote. And the irony was sharp. Ethan built Aerolink from nothing. Yet the ones preparing to judge him were shareholders who had never touched a line of code, never stayed awake 3 nights to fix a critical failure, never fought to prove value in a world that did not trust people like him. The boardroom door closed behind him with a loud click, a sound sharp enough to resemble a prison lock. Inside was a long walnut table surrounded by 9 people who could decide his future with a few sentences. At the head of the table sat Gregory Hayes, chairman of the board, silver-haired, sharp-eyed face, shaped by decades of power, now carrying fatigue and wariness. Ethan entered and gave a polite nod. No one smiled. A few did not even look at him. They stared instead at the thick reports laid out in front of them, as if every page carried proof of his guilt. Gregory cleared his throat. Ethan, sit down. We have a lot to discuss. Ethan sat spine straight, gaze unwavering. I am ready. And the hearing began. The first to speak was Susan Whitmore, the oldest, wealthiest, and most conservative member of the board, someone who believed technology was merely a tool, while money was the true power of the world. Mr. Marshall, she said, her voice high and icy, we received reports that you unilaterally activated the Sigma protocol, causing more than 170 Northstar aircraft to halt operations. Ethan nodded slightly. That is correct. That is correct. Her voice shot up. Do you understand the impact this had on the entire aviation industry? Ethan remained calm. I activated Sigma under the authority granted by our testing contract with North Star. It is within my power when an urgent security inspection is required. A younger man, Rick Sanders, who had only joined the board 2 years earlier, leaned forward. The issue is, was this truly an emergency? Or did you react for personal reasons? Ethan felt the word personal hit like a slap. Rick continued, rumor says you were discriminated against, and that you overreacted. Ethan looked directly at him. Have you ever been asked to prove you deserved to stand in a first-class line? Have you ever had a flight attendant question you because of your skin color? Have you ever been given a plastic cup while everyone else received glassware? Rick blinked, unable to respond. Ethan continued. This was not personal. It was the accumulation of a systemic discriminatory culture that North Star allowed to happen. And when a partner company displays such a toxic culture, it directly threatens Aerolink's value and reputation. Gregory tapped the table. Even so, you grounded their planes. That blow was far heavier than a simple warning. Ethan responded immediately. I built the system for security, not aesthetics. Sigma is designed to halt operations when trust is compromised. And North Star lost my trust when they tried to reschedule meetings and review options right after I was publicly discriminated against. That was no coincidence. Another board member, Teresa Lynn, spoke, her voice soft but sharp. Do you have proof that North Star delayed because of what happened? Ethan replied. They never said it. But I saw the looks, the attitude. And Robert Kent, their vice president of operations, witnessed everything. He knows the truth. Teresa inhaled slowly. So you are relying on instinct? No, Ethan said. I am relying on 39 years of being underestimated. People like me have instincts sharp enough to be frighteningly accurate. The room fell silent, a heavy silence, as though everyone was wrestling between ethics and financial interest. Then Gregory asked the most important question. Ethan, do you regret what you did? Ethan held his gaze for a long moment. Their eyes met like two people standing on either side of a battlefield, where a single answer could determine whether they would walk out as allies or enemies. No, Ethan said. I do not regret it. I would do it again. I was humiliated. Aerolink was disrespected, and a bad partner will drag us down. Susan gave a derisive laugh. And losing a $300 million contract will not drag us down. Ethan did not blink. Not as badly as watching our people be treated like they are worth less. Not as badly as staying silent while discrimination thrives. Not as badly as letting my technology serve a company that cannot respect its own passengers. Gregory leaned back, staring at Ethan, as if seeing a piece of the man he had never fully understood. You know you are risking your entire career. Ethan tilted his head. My career was not built on silence, and that was the moment everything shifted. Another board member, Herman Johnson, the only black man in the room besides Ethan, set his pen down and looked at Ethan with a depth of understanding no one else in the room could possess. He spoke slowly, voice deep and steady, like seasoned timber. I am the only one here who truly understands what he is saying. I have been handed plastic cups while others got glass, and I know what it feels like to be doubted even at the top. I stand with him. The entire room turned toward Herman in shock. He continued, Ethan did not do anything wrong. He did what we were too afraid to do. He held our partner accountable. Teresa looked at Herman, then at Ethan, then said, I never imagined myself saying this, but if North Star discriminated against our CEO, then what might they be doing to their customers? Susan was silent. Rick stared at the table. The change in the room did not come from logic. It came from a truth they could no longer run from. Gregory tapped the table one final time. "Ethan Marshall," he said slowly, "you remain the CEO of AeroLink. We will stand behind you in this fight, but you must help us survive it." Ethan stood. "I will not let AeroLink take the fall. I have a plan." Gregory folded his arms. What plan? Ethan scanned the room, his eyes sharp as the overhead lights reflecting off the table. "I will turn this crisis into an opportunity, not just to teach North Star a lesson, but to show the entire aviation industry that AeroLink leads not only in technology, but in values." A collective breath swept across the room, like the air finally easing after hours of suffocation. Gregory rose and extended his hand. "Then we fight together." Ethan shook it. The temperature in the room shifted. The pressure eased. It was no longer a courtroom. It was a war room. Ethan walked out of the boardroom, and when the door closed behind him, for the first time in 24 hours he allowed his shoulders to relax. Not because the battle was over, but because the greatest battle was about to begin. North Star would think he was seeking revenge. But they did not know Ethan Marshall did not hunt people. He hunted change, and his next target was not an individual. It was an entire system. That afternoon settled over Los Angeles in a heavy bronze glow, the kind of light that carried the feeling that today was only the opening act of a much longer war. Ethan Marshall stood before the floor-to-ceiling glass window of his office on the 42nd floor, watching the entire city stretch beneath him, the towers, the weaving freeways, the endless streams of traffic flowing like the veins of a giant organism in constant motion. He knew that right now, somewhere below, thousands of people were debating his name. At North Star, they were trembling. In newsrooms, they were guessing. In the black community, they were nodding in quiet recognition. And inside AeroLink, an entire workforce was waiting for his next move. The office door opened, and he did not need to turn around to know who had walked in. Alicia Reynolds. The rhythm of her heels was not rushed, but every step carried the weight of information. "Ethan," she said, placing her laptop on the small conference table in the corner, "I have an update." Ethan turned, arms crossed. The angled sunlight carved sharp lines across his face, like cold stone. Alicia opened her laptop. "First, the media. The video of the flight attendant discriminating against you is going viral exponentially. By prime time tonight, it will almost certainly hit national headlines. We will be the front page everywhere." Ethan's lips lifted slightly. Not a smile, but the expression of someone who had seen it coming. Alicia continued. "Second North Star just released a press statement. They regret the incident, say they are cooperating with federal agencies to ensure safety, and they are blaming us." Ethan raised an eyebrow. Alicia read a portion aloud. "AeroLink's system activated an unexpected diagnostic mode. We expect AeroLink to cooperate fully to resolve the issue." Ethan let out a short laugh, one without warmth. "Prediction. They will blame us for everything until they realize I am not someone they can push around." "There is more," Alicia said, eyes still on the screen. The rival company Skyguard Systems posted a subtle jab online saying, "No modern aviation system should ever have a widespread self-shutdown mode." Ethan closed his eyes for a moment. Of course, Skyguard would jump in. They smell blood. Alicia leaned toward him. "The problem is they are not entirely wrong. Even though you activated Sigma properly, the fact remains that Aerolink froze an entire airline for a morning. Ethan opened his eyes again, sharp as a blade. I know, and I am going to use that to win. Alicia paused, then nodded slowly. All right. So, what is your plan? Ethan stepped away from the window, walked to the conference table, and sat down like a commander preparing a battle map. Alicia Northstar thinks they can twist the narrative, but they forget something. I hold the data. I hold the truth. And most importantly, I hold the momentum. He rotated his laptop toward her. On the screen was the full list of the 176 affected flights, the airports, the routes, the minutes frozen, the minutes restored. The data pulsed like the heartbeat of a massive creature that had collapsed and been revived by the same hand that stopped it. I activated Sigma, yes, Ethan said. But I also proved how weak their security infrastructure was. An airline should not be shaken to its core by a single diagnostic check. If their systems were strong, they would not have fallen apart. Alicia stared at him, visibly stunned by how quickly he was turning the crisis into a strategy. So you want to turn the shutdown into a demonstration? Ethan nodded. Aerolink is powerful enough to stop an entire Northstar fleet, yet safe enough that once I disabled Sigma, everything returned to normal. No crashes, no accidents, no danger. Just the truth. Our system is their backbone. Alicia let out a small laugh, impressed by the audacity. You want to use the crisis itself to show that Northstar needs us more than we need them, Ethan replied. Not just Northstar, the entire aviation industry. Alicia closed her laptop and crossed her arms. All right, what is step one? Ethan walked to the large glass board, mounted on the wall, picked up a marker, and wrote 1. Control the narrative. 2. Open the data front. 3. Shift responsibility back to Northstar. 4. Go on public offense. He underlined each line with force. Step 1, Ethan said, I will release a public statement, not to defend myself, to ask a question. Alicia narrowed her eyes. What question? Ethan turned to her. How safe should an airline system be? And if a CEO is treated as unworthy, how safe are ordinary passengers? Alicia inhaled. You want to bring discrimination into the spotlight. It is already in the spotlight, Ethan said. I am just helping everyone see it clearly. He wrote on the board again. Step 2, release Sigma data. We will show that Aerolink performed exactly as designed. Every aircraft recovered precisely as expected. No security flaws, no risks, just proper protocol. Alicia pressed her lips together. Northstar will lose their minds. Exactly, Ethan said. And that is when their mistakes will show. He wrote again. Step 3, counterattack Northstar. We demand they explain why they reconsidered the contract right after the discrimination incident. Demand original reports from customer service. Demand security footage. And most importantly, demand they release their anti-discrimination training policy. Alicia leaned back, crossing her arms. You are flipping the board. Aerolink is no longer on defense. Northstar is. Correct, Ethan said. And once they are exposed, I will move to the final step. He wrote the last line. Step 4, expand influence. Alicia asked, what do you intend to do? Ethan answered, his voice dropping with the weight of an approaching storm. Turn my story into the story of millions. I will announce a new initiative, the Aerolink Equity Alliance, a commitment requiring all our partners to meet fair conduct standards for passengers and staff. No racism, no exclusion, no contempt. Alicia stayed silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, Her voice no longer belonged to a vice president. It belonged to someone witnessing history being written by a man she believed in. Ethan, you are no longer just the CEO of AeroLink. You are becoming the new voice of justice in aviation. Ethan set the marker down, hands clasped, eyes on the city, though he was really looking far beyond it. I do not want to be a symbol, he said. I just want to force the system to change. And if I must become something to make that happen, I will become it. Alicia stood. I will arrange the press conference, 4 o'clock. Ethan nodded. And you should rest, even if just a little. No, he said softly. Rest is for later. Right now is for battle. When Alicia left, Ethan turned back to the glass board, staring at the 4 lines, 4 steps that would rip the silence out of the aviation industry. He thought of his mother, who always said her son would change something bigger than himself. He thought of the nights when young Ethan sat on the kitchen floor, assembling old circuit boards, like he was piecing together fragments of the future. He thought of the moment Haley looked at him, like he did not deserve to stand in the first-class line. And he thought, enough. He picked up his phone, a new message from an unknown number. Mr. Marshall, I am the attorney representing Haley Grant. She wishes to speak with you. Ethan read the words. His eyes darkened. Another door to this war had just opened a door behind which he could not yet see, but he knew one thing: whatever waited on the other side, he would walk straight into it. Because for the first time in his life, he was not fighting only for himself. He was fighting for every person who had ever stood in the right line, only to be told they did not belong. The message from Haley Grant's attorney sat on Ethan's phone screen like a sudden crack across glass he thought had already hardened. He tapped a finger lightly against the table, not out of confusion, but because he understood one truth when the person who caused the damage tries to reach out. It is never because they want to apologize. It is because they are afraid. But he did not reply. He set the phone down, pinching the bridge of his nose, letting a few seconds of silence settle between one breath and the next. A much larger battle awaited him at the press conference that afternoon. Haley was only a fragment of the war, and Ethan refused to let that fragment distract him. 4 o'clock arrived, and the AeroLink press hall became the center of the country's attention. Dozens of reporters pushed and crowded flashes, exploding across eager faces like a pack of wolves who had smelled fresh blood. CNN, NBC, Reuters, even tabloid sites were present. Some streamed live from their phones. Some whispered among themselves, saying things like, "Will he deny it? Will he blame North Star? Will he resign? Will he flip the narrative?" Ethan stood in the backstage waiting room, both hands pressed on the table. Head bowed, eyes closed, as if holding every idea in place so none escaped him. The door opened. Alicia entered, followed by 2 assistants and AeroLink's legal representative. Ethan Alicia said quietly, "North Star just sent a new email." Ethan lifted his head. "What does it say?" Alicia handed him the tablet. "They are asking you not to mention discrimination during the press conference. They want you to call it a misunderstanding to protect the airline's image." Ethan laughed, a low, bitter sound with no warmth. "They want me to lie to protect them." Alicia did not answer. Ethan looked down at his hands, the same hands that had typed the code, protecting millions of people, the same hands that built an aviation security system from the ground up. And now North Star wanted those hands to stay silent. "No, never." Alicia, Ethan said slowly, "Prepare a reply for after the press conference. Just 1 sentence." What sentence everything you want me to hide, I will expose." Alicia took a breath, as if gathering strength before walking into a storm. Then she nodded. "It is time." When they entered the press hall, the noise hit them like a wave slamming into stone. Flashes burst like white fireworks. Every eye turned to Ethan the same way they had in the North Star boardroom the day before, only now magnified 100-fold, 1,000-fold. Ethan stood at the podium. He did not speak immediately. He looked at the crowd as if ensuring that each person understood he was not here to defend himself. He was here to tell the truth. And truth carried its own weight. Finally, he began. "Thank you all for being here." His voice filled the room steady and grounded, not cold, but the voice of someone who had been wounded and refused to bow. "I will be direct. Yes, I activated the Sigma protocol. Yes, I did it under the exact authority and testing procedures North Star agreed to. And yes, I did it because I experienced blatant discrimination. A wave of gasps washed over the room. Cameras flashed in a frenzy. Ethan continued, not giving anyone time to breathe. I was asked if I was in the right line. I was asked to prove I deserved the seat I paid for with my own work. I am the CEO of AeroLink, yet I was treated like I didn't belong. And when I reported it, when I asked for accountability, they threw a voucher in my face." Ethan paused for a single second. 1 second long enough for every gaze to sharpen. "This is not a personal story. This is the story of millions of black passengers who are questioned, belittled, and handed plastic cups while others receive glass." Dozens of hands shot up. "Mr. Marshall, do you have evidence?" Ethan raised the corner of his mouth, an expression rare for a man who kept his emotions guarded. "I do." He activated the large screen behind him. The airport footage showed Haley Grant leaning toward Ethan, her voice sharp. "Are you sure you are in the right line?" Then showed Mark Fuller interrogating his ID while others walked through unchecked. The video ended in dead silence. Reporters erupted like a shaken hive. "Mr. Marshall, do you believe North Star has systemic discrimination? Are you planning to sue Will AeroLink, end its partnership with North Star?" Ethan lifted a hand, signaling them to stop. "I am not here to destroy North Star. I am here to demand they change." He turned back to the screen, now displaying Sigma data, each flight, each metric, each result proving AeroLink performed exactly as designed. Our system did not create danger. It exposed vulnerabilities North Star did not want to acknowledge. A reporter called out, "So what exactly do you want from North Star?" Ethan looked directly into the television lens as if speaking to the entire nation. "I want a public apology. I want mandatory anti-discrimination training. I want them to commit to valuing people over profit. And if they refuse, I will reconsider our partnership." The room exploded again, and in the chaos a hand lifted from the front row. Not a reporter. Not an analyst. A woman in a black suit stood with a firm posture and eyes filled not with fear, but with a bitter clarity. "My name is Emma Lowell," she said into a microphone attorney for Ms. Haley Grant. A wave of murmurs swept through the hall. Ethan stood straighter, eyes narrowed. Emma continued, "Ms. Grant wishes to offer you a personal apology, but she also wants you to know that North Star is responsible for the culture that led to her behavior." Another wave of noise. A reporter shouted, "Are you saying North Star trains their staff to discriminate?" Emma answered clearly, "They do not train discrimination, but they allow it to happen every day without correcting it." Ethan stared at Emma, weighing every word. If that is true, Ethan asked, his voice low like rolling stone, "Why did Miss Grant not say something earlier?" Emma did not blink, because she feared losing her job, until Mr. Marshall made the entire industry stop, until she realized her silence had harmed someone who did not deserve it. Ethan said nothing for several seconds. The room fell silent with him. Finally, he lifted the microphone. "I do not need an apology." Emma frowned. "You do not. I need change," Ethan said. "I am not here to punish one person. I am here to break a system." And in that instant, the hall fell silent, as if all the air had been drained away. Ethan placed the microphone down. The press conference ended, not with applause, not with noise, but with the heavy metallic silence of an entire industry being forced to look in the mirror. Ethan turned and walked backstage. Alicia caught up to him. "Ethan, you just dropped a bomb on the entire system." Ethan stopped at the doorway, leading into the hallway, and looked at her. His eyes held no anger, no triumph, only the unwavering resolve of someone who had endured too much. "No," he said. I turned on the light, and he walked away, leaving behind a stage that from this day forward would never again belong to silence. The response came from North Star like a slap to the face, sudden and sharp, with no warning and no room to breathe. The moment Ethan left the press conference, social media exploded, but North Star exploded bigger. At their Denver headquarters inside the 29th floor conference room, with glass walls overlooking the Rocky Mountains, North Star's leadership was fighting like a hive that had been kicked open. CEO Richard Collins slammed his fist on the table so hard, the water glasses trembled. "He just put us in the center of a national firestorm." His voice cracked with rage, panic, and wounded arrogance. "Sigma Protocol is not our fault," the deputy technical director stammered, flipping through a report with shaking hands. "It was designed to... I do not care what it was designed to do." Collins roared, making the engineer flinch. "I care that he made us look like a racist and incompetent circus in front of the entire country," the chief legal officer, Ms. Quinn, shot to her feet. "Richard, calm down. We need strategy, not shouting. Ethan Marshall has video evidence. If we deny, we get exposed. If we stay silent, we get exposed. If we apologize, we shoot ourselves in the foot." "So what do you want me to do?" Collins snapped. "We are being threatened by a man playing the victim. He is the CEO of the company that powers our entire system. He froze 176 of our planes. We cannot look weak." In the corner, Robert Kent, the only person who had witnessed everything on the plane, remained silent. He had not dared speak since the meeting began, because he knew what would happen. If he spoke the truth, they would turn him into the enemy. But when Collins slammed the table again and barked, "I want the entire communications department to attack AeroLink. Accuse their system of being dangerous. Say they lack control. Make the public doubt Ethan Marshall's credibility." Robert could not stay silent. He rose from his seat. Every head turned. Collins scowled, as if looking at a problem he did not have time for. "Robert, do you have something to say?" His voice was a warning. Robert lifted his chin. His eyes were no longer trembling like the day before. They were sharper, stronger, as if he had stepped through fear into a place of courage. "We cannot attack AeroLink," Collins smirked. "Oh, and why not?" "Because they are not wrong." The room went silent, as if a courtroom had just heard a confession. Collins stared at him. What did you just say?" Robert drew a steady breath. "I saw everything. What Ethan said is true. Haley discriminated against him. Mark did the same. And Daniel dismissed his complaint. Every word he said was true. Collins narrowed his eyes, voice dropping to a frozen whisper. Robert Kent. I am beginning to think you have forgotten who pays your salary. I remember exactly who pays me, Robert replied without a tremor. And I also remember we are on the edge of being hated by the entire country for allowing a discriminatory culture to exist. If we attack Ethan, it will be suicide. Suicide Collins let out a metallic laugh. No, suicide is letting that man control the narrative. Robert met his stare head on a stare that once intimidated him, but no longer. Mr. Collins, Ethan Marshall is not controlling the narrative. The truth is. And if you fight the truth, you will lose. The words hit the room like a punch that bounced off every wall. No one dared breathe. Collins stepped closer, so near they could hear each other's heartbeat. You are taking the side of the man who cost us tens of millions of dollars. I am taking the side of what is right. The door flew open before Collins could retaliate. A pale-faced assistant rushed in, as if witnessing a disaster. So North Star is trending #1 on Twitter, but not in a good way. Every person tensed. What do you mean? Collins asked. The assistant held up his phone, voice cracking. The discrimination video has hit 12 million views, and the worst part is the hashtag ground them all. The room froze. What does that mean? Collins asked, slower. Now fear creeping into his tone. People are demanding the FAA investigate North Star's entire culture. Some are calling for a temporary grounding if we do not provide transparency. Collins went pale. The FAA would never. They already emailed the assistant, cut in, sounding like he was about to cry. They are demanding an official explanation and have requested a special hearing. Collins staggered back a half step, as if the floor had shifted under him. Robert watched his reaction, not with satisfaction or anger, but with something else, the quiet understanding that the system he had served for decades was finally being forced to face the truth. Meanwhile, 1,300 miles away at Aerolink Tower, Ethan was reading a data analysis report. Alicia stood across from him, arms crossed, her expressions tense, but her eyes burning with something Ethan rarely saw in his career hope. Ethan, she said, we just received confirmation that the FAA is considering a formal investigation into North Star. Ethan raised an eyebrow slightly, faster than I expected. Not only that, Alicia said, handing him her tablet. Investors are putting pressure on North Star's executives. Their stock has dropped 8%, and multiple civil rights groups are demanding an independent investigation. Ethan set the tablet on the table, arms folding. They are beginning to understand. They are beginning to understand because you forced them to. Alicia replied. Ethan turned toward the window, the golden evening sunlight spreading across his features. But in his eyes was not the glow of sunset. It was the burn of a fire that had just been fanned higher. Alicia, he said slowly, it is time for the next step. Alicia swallowed. What step? Ethan turned back, his expression sharp as a blade. We will officially demand that North Star sign the Fairness Commitment, a binding code that requires employee training, oversight, transparency, and disciplinary action for discrimination. And the condition for Aerolink continuing our partnership is that they sign it. Alicia froze. Not because it was bold, but because it was bold in a way only Ethan could think of. Ethan, yes, he said. If they agree, the system will change. If they refuse, we release everything. Every piece of data, every piece of evidence, the entire story. He walked to the glass board, ripped off the cap of the marker, and wrote one line. No compromise with injustice. Alicia stared at the words, then at Ethan. And in that moment, she understood. Ethan was no longer just the CEO of Aerolink. He was becoming the leader of a revolution against discrimination in aviation. A battle no one had asked him to lead, yet everyone was now watching him fight. Alicia spoke softly, her voice no longer that of a colleague, but of a true ally. Ethan, are you prepared if North Star strikes back? If they try to destroy your reputation? If they sue? Ethan met her eyes. Alicia, I have spent my entire life being treated like I did not belong. I have lived through every form of doubt, from the looks of teachers to the dismissive glances of airport staff. I am prepared for any battle. And for the first time in my life, I am not fighting alone. Outside the window, the Los Angeles sky shifted into purple, the sunset spilling like hot blood across the horizon. Ethan stood still for a long moment, his chest filled with a determination stronger than any he had ever known. Alicia, he said finally, his voice heavy yet bright, prepare the notice for North Star, and prepare the board meeting. Tonight, Aerolink begins changing the entire aviation industry. The door closed behind her, leaving Ethan alone in the vast room. But for the first time, that solitude was not a burden. It was power. And he knew the next battle, the more dangerous and brutal one, was already closing in. But he was ready to walk into it like a man walking into fire with his eyes wide open. The war began officially at 7:12 the next morning, when an email titled "The Fairness Commitment Sign" immediately landed in the inboxes of North Star Airlines' entire executive leadership. Immediately. No warning. No courtesy. No soft edges. It detonated like a bomb at the center of a corporation already trembling under the weight of public outrage. In North Star's conference room, where winds from the Rocky Mountains pressed against thick glass walls as if trying to topple everything inside, CEO Richard Collins stood before the giant display screen, his eyes bloodshot from a sleepless night. Around him, his senior executives wore a mixture of outrage, shock, fear, and what infuriated Collins most, an undercurrent of reluctant respect for Ethan Marshall's audacity. This code of conduct, the HR director whispered, while flipping pages, then looked at Collins as if reading a death sentence. Richard, if we sign this, we are admitting North Star has a discrimination problem. Collins clenched his jaw. I know. But if we do not sign, Robert Kent said quietly, we face a full FAA investigation, investor pullout, and possibly a temporary grounding. Silence swallowed the room. Not the silence of typical corporate tension, but the silence of people standing at the edge of a cliff with no idea which way the wind would shove them. Collins turned toward Robert, his stare drilling in. Do you know what the real problem is? Ethan Marshall is trying to turn himself into a saint. He does not just want our signature. He wants to make us the mirror reflecting everything ugly in aviation. No, Robert answered, not looking away. He wants us to fix it. Collins slammed his palms onto the table. I do not need anyone teaching me how to run my company. Across the country, inside Aerolink's headquarters, Ethan sat before his laptop, spinning a pen, slowly between his fingers like a sheathed blade. Alicia stood beside him, arms folded, eyes fixed on the list of terms in the fairness commitment. A code of 18 uncompromising standards, including mandatory quarterly anti-discrimination training, independent audits, transparent reporting, anonymous oversight, and immediate suspension of employees when bias is proven. Ethan, Alicia said, pointing to item 18, This clause is a real bomb. Item 18 read, Aerolink reserves the right to suspend all services immediately if North Star violates ethical standards. This is going to explode, Alicia finished. Ethan did not turn, but his voice dropped like the first drumbeat of war. A necessary bomb. Alicia exhaled. But North Star will react. Hard. We will see. Ethan hit send on the next email, only 12 words long, yet powerful enough to turn the battle into total war. I will not negotiate with discrimination. Signed, E.M. Within an hour, North Star struck back. On Twitter they posted, North Star is committed to absolute passenger safety. We are reviewing the Sigma Protocol incident triggered outside procedural norms by Aerolink. Ethan read it in silence. Alicia nearly smashed the monitor. Outside procedural norms, they are smearing you. Ethan gave a faint smirk. Let them. But North Star did not stop at smears. They launched a full-scale counterattack. The media suddenly flooded with leaks. Aerolink's system may pose danger. An emotional CEO shut down an entire airline. Aerolink holds too much power. Ethan Marshall overstepped. Ethan watched the headlines roll in his eyes, darkening. Not from fear, he had long been familiar with being misunderstood, distorted, and painted as the problem. But this time was different. This time he had the truth. Alicia, standing behind him, her voice tight as a pulled string, said, "We need to respond. Right now." Ethan stood. "No. Not yet. We wait one more beat. Let them push themselves further." Because Ethan knew panic makes an opponent sloppy, and North Star made exactly the mistake he expected. At 11:26, an internal email was leaked online. In it, Collins wrote to his executives, "We need to downplay the discrimination issue. Refer to it as inconsistent service experience. Public outrage detonated. New hashtags surged. Stop hiding, call it what it is. Discrimination is not a service issue." Alicia read the leaked email and turned to Ethan. "We won. Not yet," he replied, "but we are close." Meanwhile, in Denver, Collins was like an animal cornered. He slammed the report onto the table and shouted at his tech team, who leaked that email, who no one answered. Robert watched from across the room, and for the first time, he knew North Star had lost control. By early afternoon, Aerolink held an emergency meeting. Ethan stood before his entire leadership team. "We will release all Sigma data," he announced. "If North Star wants information, warfare, I will show them what transparency actually looks like." The legal director frowned. "Ethan, if we release the data, you will be proving you have the ability to halt an entire aviation system." "I did not halt a system," Ethan replied instantly. "I protected it." Silence filled the room. Ethan continued, "We released the data, but not defensively." He flipped to the next slide. One sentence appeared. "The Sigma Protocol proves aviation needs a new safety standard. Stronger, smarter, fairer. And Aerolink will lead." Alicia stared at the words, then at Ethan. "You are turning a crisis into the foundation for industry reform." Ethan faced the room. "I do not want to beat North Star. I want to change aviation." The entire room stood not because he asked, but because their instincts told them they were standing behind someone about to shift the entire industry. At 4 o'clock, Ethan appeared on national television, not in a press hall, not in a crowd, but in a darkened studio with a single light on his face. He spoke slowly, each word landing like a nail in steel. "I did not activate the Sigma Protocol for revenge. I activated it to reveal what all of us know, but none of us say." He stared into the camera eyes, unflinching. "That an industry transporting millions each day cannot be run by people who discriminate. that safety cannot depend on bias, that protection begins with respect. He displayed the Sigma data, every flight, every metric, every flawless recovery. Sigma did not make North Star dangerous, Ethan said. It exposed that North Star was already dangerous. Social media erupted. Within 1 hour, the video hit 5 million views. North Star panicked for real. Collins slammed the table so hard a crack appeared across it. We need a final counterstrike. Attack the legality of Aerolink, but Robert rose his voice, no longer trembling, but booming like thunder. If you do that, I will testify against you. The room froze. Collins stared as if seeing a stranger. You dare, I dare, Robert said. And I will. Chaos broke loose. The meeting collapsed. Collins stormed out, his face drained of color. On his way to his office, he received a call from the chairman of the board. After only a few sentences, for the first time in 17 years, as CEO, Richard Collins's knees buckled. The board demanded he step aside under temporary suspension during the investigation. He was out of the war. At 8 that evening in Aerolink's office, Ethan received an email from North Star. Only 9 words. We agree to sign the fairness commitment. Alicia exhaled in relief, the weight sliding off her shoulders. But Ethan simply stared at the sentence, then shook his head slowly. They are not done. What else do you want? Ethan stepped toward the glass window, looking out at the glowing city below. Not just a signature. I want an apology. Public. Before the entire nation. Alicia was silent for several seconds. They will never agree. Ethan replied softly, his voice like footsteps carved in stone. They will, because I will leave them no other choice. And as night fell over, Los Angeles, Ethan stood alone at the window, the city lights reflected in his eyes like a field of stars waiting for him to move them. He knew the final stage of this war would be the most brutal, but it was also the stage he had waited his whole life to confront, forcing a colossal system to kneel before the truth. And he was ready. The fateful morning began with an unusual stillness, a kind of quiet that made the glass towers of Los Angeles seem to stand frozen in anticipation. Ethan Marshall woke at 5:11 in the morning, not because of an alarm clock, but because of a deep certainty rising in his chest, the certainty of someone who knows a chapter of the world is ending and a new one is about to begin. He stood before the bedroom window, watching a blush of pink stretch across the early sky. Below, the city stirred awake, unaware that today a monumental shift would occur, not in silence, but before the entire nation. His phone vibrated softly. A message from Alicia appeared. Ethan. North Star has agreed to a joint press conference, 10 this morning. Their entire leadership will be present, and they will apologize. Ethan read each word as if reading a prophecy. No loud joy, no triumphant rush. Only a deep stillness, the kind felt by someone who has lived long enough to understand that real change only happens when the powerful finally bow to the truth. 9:27 in the morning. Aerolink Tower. The entire 42nd floor glowed under the white glare of dozens of cameras. More than 300 reporters packed the corridors, the clicking of keyboards mixing with the uneasy murmurs of thousands watching the live stream. Some whispered, "Are they really going to apologize? No way. This must be a setup. Ethan Marshall is going to destroy them on live television." Alicia stepped to Ethan's side, holding a thick folder. "Are you ready?" Ethan adjusted his collar, his eyes fixed on the countdown clock. "The question is not whether I am ready," he said softly. his voice steady and low. The question is, are they ready to face the consequences of the truth? At exactly 10 o'clock, the glass doors slid open. Outside, a storm of flashing lights exploded like thunder in a clear sky. Ethan stepped out first, shoulders, straight gaze, sharp. Not the gaze of someone seeking victory, but of someone about to force an entire system to confront its own reflection. A few seconds later, the North Star delegation entered. Leading them was not Collins, who had been suspended, but Linda Mayer, the chairwoman of the North Star board, a woman in her early 60s, with soft silver hair, but eyes that held no fragility. Behind her trailed the remaining executives, their faces pale like people dragged out from hiding places built from excuses. No one spoke. No one breathed loudly. The entire room seemed stripped of air. Linda approached the podium first. She placed her hands on the microphone, gripping it gently, as if steadying her own pulse. "Thank you all for being here," she said, her voice hoarse but clear. "Today, North Star Airlines stands before you, not to defend ourselves. We are here to accept responsibility." A wave of murmurs swept the room. Linda drew a long breath. "For years we have spoken about safety service and trust, but we have failed in the most fundamental duty of all respecting human beings." Silence fell like stone. We allowed a culture where passengers like Mr. Ethan Marshall were doubted, treated unfairly, and harmed by biases we refused to confront. Her voice trembled. "We are sorry." The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. But Ethan did not look at them. He looked at Linda. Not with hostility. Not with satisfaction. But with the gaze of someone witnessing a system finally waking up. Linda continued, "We apologize to you, Mr. Marshall. Not because you are the CEO of AeroLink. Not because you ignited a national conversation. We apologize because you are a passenger, a human being, and we treated you wrongly." Her words fell heavy, so heavy no one dared move. She turned slightly toward Ethan. "And we thank you for forcing us to face what we avoided for years." Ethan stepped to the podium. Every camera tilted toward him, waiting for a vengeful statement, a cutting remark, a triumphant blow. But Ethan did none of that. His voice was low, calm, powerful enough to slice through all the chaos. "I do not want to see North Star fail," he began. Gasps rippled across the room. "I want to see North Star become better." He lifted his eyes to the broadcast lens, speaking to the millions watching live. This fight was never between AeroLink and North Star, never between me and those who hurt me. This fight is between all of us and silence. Silence when we see injustice. Silence when we see discrimination. Silence when truth is swallowed by fear. He paused. "I activated the Sigma Protocol not for revenge. I activated it to remind all of us that safety does not begin with technology. Safety begins with people." Ethan opened the document in his hand. "And today North Star has signed the fairness commitment." Linda stepped forward and signed the final page in front of everyone. A camera shutter snapped loudly, like the pop of a signal flare. Ethan continued, "They have agreed to transparency, agreed to oversight, agreed to accountability, agreed to end discriminatory culture." The entire room felt suspended in time. Then Ethan delivered the final line, the one that would reverberate across the country. "This is not my victory. This is the victory of everyone who ever stood in the right line and was told they did not belong." Applause erupted like an earthquake. Not polite applause, but applause pulled from the lungs, the heart, the soul. the applause of people realizing they were witnessing a moment that would be remembered for years. After the press conference, Ethan stepped outside to breathe. The sky was impossibly blue, as if even the air felt lighter. Alicia appeared moments later. "Ethan." She said, her eyes glowing with a rare emotion, the emotion of someone who had witnessed something historic. "You just did what no CEO has ever done." Ethan stared into the calm distance, feeling peace for the first time in months. "No," he said. "I only did what should have been done a long time ago." Alicia moved beside him. "So is the battle over, Ethan." Let a faint smile appear, one that rarely surfaced. "No, the battle never truly ends." But he looked toward the sky, where a North Star plane ascended, steady and safe. "At least today we made it a little more just." His phone vibrated, a message from someone he never expected. "Thank you." From Haley Grant. Ethan looked at the message for a moment. He did not reply. He did not need to. He stepped into the elevator, the doors closing, to reveal the reflection of a man who had gone from a boy, questioned for simply existing, to a man who brought an airline to its knees in front of the truth. And as the elevator rose, Ethan understood today was not about proving power. Today was about proving dignity, his own, and the dignity of everyone who had ever been dismissed because of how they looked. An ending not meant to gloat, but to begin again. A new chapter, a new aviation industry, a new America, where fairness is not a privilege, but a standard. And across the country, in countless homes watching the live stream, many people smiled quietly, because they knew, sometimes for light to spread, all it takes is one person brave enough to stand. From the perspective of an expert in organizational culture and power dynamics, Ethan Marshall's journey reveals a truth that never changes. A system only transforms when someone courageous enough forces it to. Discrimination does not live solely in harsh words. It lives in suspicious glances, in opaque processes, and in organizations that choose silence over accountability. But what this story proves is that every structure has a weakness, and the greatest weakness of injustice is the moment someone dares to shine a light on it. Ethan did not use his power for revenge, he used it to clear a path. He did not bring North Star to its knees, he compelled them to rise. That is the true nature of leadership, not making others bow down, but making them look up and face themselves. If this story resonates with you, please like the video to help the message of fairness and responsibility reach further, and subscribe so you do not miss the journeys ahead, journeys where truth, perseverance, and courage always create real change. And finally, comment the phrase "stand up" to remind each other that sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to rise for an entire system to change.